As I mentioned at the start of the show, we have a guest joining us. So this is actually a friend of ours too, but we're here in the great state of Texas, which is not true in every state. We elect our state judges, our judges that serve in state courts, whether it is trial court, appellate court, or the highest court in the state. And we have with us today Judge Bill Whitehill. He was elected to the Texas 5th District Court of Appeals in Dallas in November 2014, and he has served since that time. He is up for re-election this year. And the reason I want to have him on, because this isn't just a Texas issue. In states around the country, in this fall election season, people will have the choice in the ballot in many states to elect judges. And there is, in my estimation, my kind of anecdotal observation, there's a tendency among some people who don't pay that much attention to politics to think, well, what difference does it make? I mean, the law is the law, the facts are the fact, the judges are going to do the right thing. So what difference does it make which judge wins? So I want to talk with Bill Whitehill today about what difference it makes electing judges who will follow the rule of law, number one. Number two, the difference it can make in your daily life, the kinds of decisions that are made that impact your life, your future. This happens to be here in Texas, but all over the country. And that was a long introduction to welcome Judge Whitehill. Hello, sir.
Thank you, Debbie. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. And actually, you're just, I think you're on the show one other time, and you're just very articulate explaining these things. And I just think it's so important as we head toward the fall elections. So tell someone, what is the answer if they say, what difference does it really make? These judges serving on courts, I mean, what difference could it make which one you pick? Because the law is the law, the facts are the facts.
Wow, that's a very wide open question.
Big question.
Two basic legal camps. One is the notion of natural law, which are just certain fundamental rights. And that's what our country is based on, God-given rights, or natural law is just as a function of nature. There are certain rights that are inalienable, immutable. And then there's legal positivism, which is a big word for the law is whatever we think it needs to be at any point in time. Some judges are in one camp and some are in the other. I'm in the natural law camp. And knowing that difference makes a big difference in understanding how our constitutional government works and the judicial role in that process. Our role in the judiciary is to take the laws that the legislature writes and enacts and apply them according to the words the legislature used, which is very, very critical to our constitutional representative form of government. People elect legislators or members of Congress to write policy. Our job is to hold them accountable to the words they choose, regardless of whether we agree with those words, disagree with those words, or don't care. Because the legislators, the legislative people need to be accountable to those words so that when they go up for re-election, they have a record that they can run on and create that policy. Rule of law is critical because we need predictability and certainty. All law is about allocating risk in our society. What if people get hurt? What are the risks that we're going to do with that? Or our economy depends upon voluntary exchanges, so we need people that are willing to invest their money in a voluntary way or to buy products or goods or services. In order to do that, you have to have predictability and consistency, so that if I enter into this deal today and invest my money today, I know that 3 years down the road, if there's a dispute, that dispute's going to be governed by the deal we made today or under the laws that existed when we made that deal today. Families need to know when they're doing estate planning or just going about their day-to-day business what the law is and can manage their risk by having certainty. And that's what we do on the Court of Appeals. That's a long answer.
It was a great answer. I actually want to do some follow-up, but I meant to mention the court you serve on, the Court of Appeals, you actually handle criminal and civil cases.
We handle everything that could affect the life of a day-to-day Texan. It could be criminal, it could be civil, it could be probate, trust, family law, juvenile law. The only types of cases that come through the state court system that we don't handle as an intermediate appellate court are death penalty cases. Now, it could be the exact same case, the exact same facts, the exact same people, and it's a life imprisonment case, and it would come to us before it will go to your next guest in the Court of Criminal Appeals in Austin. But other than that, what we do affects the lives of everyday Texans every single day, regardless of whether they ever have a case from the court system, and I hope they never do. But it's...
We all hope that we never do, yes.
Right. Something bad has happened in your life if your business or you are in court for some reason. And we don't want anybody to do that. But we do. So our legal system depends upon a concept we call stare decisis, which is just legal precedence. Our court is supposed to do the same thing in every case involving the same facts. And when we decide a case, we write an opinion that says what we did and why we did it, and that then becomes the precedent that we have to follow. The people who live in our 6 counties, and we live in 6 counties, Dallas, Collin, Grayson, Rockwall, Kaufman, and Hunt counties, have to follow that. So when the legislature, and I'll give you an example of how we impact people's lives every day. The Texas legislature has written a statute that governs virtually every aspect of your day-to-day life. It could be the health code, the property code, whatever code. There's a statute that governs it. When that public policy came into being, there were 181 elected members of the legislature that were involved with or had the opportunity to be involved with creating that public policy. Governor has his or her signature on it. So it's 182 elected officials that we need to hold accountable. Every case we decide, and we're not a trial court, we just review trial court decisions to see if an error of law was made big enough that requires a different result. Every case that we decide has at least one statute in it. And our job is to look at the record, look at the arguments of counsel, read those statutes, and interpret what the legislature meant from the words they used, and then apply those in the case before us. We write an opinion that says what we did, why we did it, and that becomes the precedent that I was talking about. But it's what we say the legislature meant in those opinions that counts. That's what people have to abide by and follow with.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were talking about, you use a distinction, natural law versus, you said, positivism?
Legal positivism.
Well, or my terminology has often been, especially referring to the Supreme Court and higher federal courts, is do you follow the law or do you think you're making law? Right. And it's a more vernacular way to say it. But the virtue, the greatness of this idea of natural law and what you're describing is it retains the power of we the people. If we the people elect legislators and they pass a law that says something we don't like, our ability to hold on to control of government is to change the elected officials and say we're electing you because we want you to change X to Y. But we elect people because we hold that we want them to follow through with what they tell us they believe in. So they go to legislatures, whether it's Texas state, any state, or the federal government, make laws, and then when those laws are enforced by judges, you all look at them, and if you follow them, you're letting the power remain in we the people. If you deviate from that, if the court on the appellate court says, actually, even though the legislature says this, we're going to go differently, we're going to misconstrue it, we're going to adjust it, you're really taking away the power of the people to retain their ability because the choices they made in legislators are being ignored by the courts.
Exactly, and I can give you a really good recent example of how that works. There's a statute out there called the Texas Citizens Participation Act, or the TCPA. And the legislature passed it really with the goal of protecting people who speak out on public issues from being intimidated through lawsuits against them that might be frivolous lawsuits. The courts, when the statute was passed, did what we're supposed to do. We applied it the way it was written. There were some issues, apparently, with the statute that the public didn't like, and there were a lot of issues the public didn't like with the statute. Mm-hmm. And so this
happens.
but the courts enforced the statute the way it was written, and then this past session, the legislature came in and said, no, there's some big problems. We got to fix this. This is not what we intended to do. But that's how the system is supposed to work, so that we don't legislate from the bench. The legislatures legislate from the state capitol.
Great. Which then, in turn, goes back to we the people. I love the we the people concept, just the feeling that we are self-governing.
Oh, absolutely.
Through a structure set in place, so it allows us to, we each don't make our own set of laws, but we have a system. And if you deviate from it, as the court does, you're really taking away the power of the people to direct public policy. And much of what happens, and frankly, in the appellate court level, there have been people who embrace the positivism or we don't follow the rule of law, the kind of make up stuff branch of the judiciary that just kind of implement what's trendy, what is politically correct, what is pushed on them.
Or what they think is better policy.
Better policy.
And, in my view, policy is not my job. So I'm not interested in the policy. I'm interested in what did the legislature say? How does it apply to these facts that are in this case before me?
Exactly right. So this election here in the great state of Texas, November 3rd, and so this court that you sit on, it's the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal?
Fifth District Court of Appeal.
Fifth District Court of Appeal. How many judges?
There are 13 judges on our court, a Chief Justice and 12 other justices. We are the largest, most active intermediate appellate court in the state of Texas. In terms of the number of cases we deal with, the number of judges, we have a huge impact, of course, in our 6-county area, but because we're the largest, most active intermediate court in the state, we have a huge impact statewide. People pay attention to us.
And how many people who sit on that bench, sit in that court, are up for election this time?
There are 3 of us up for election this time. I am, Justice David Evans is, and Justice John Browning, who just joined the court on Monday, is up for election.
That's right. That's right. Well, sad circumstance, but yeah.
A horrible circumstance. A longtime Justice David Bridges was killed in a drunk driving incident, allegedly drunk driving incident, a little over a month ago.
Yeah, he wasn't the drunk driver. The car that hit him was the alleged drunk driver, just to be clear.
Yes, just to be clear. David was a fine gentleman, fine judge, highly respected. Was the longest serving justice on our court in our court's history. Wow,
I did not know that. Okay, I knew him. He was an amazing guy. Okay, so the elections is this fall. And what's really hard, when you have people running for the legislative slots, state house, state senate, every state in the country, along with running for Congress, people can argue policies. They come to voters and say, hey, vote for me because I'm whatever I am, pro-life, pro-choice, whatever they're advocating, and you know something about them. And I think this is one reason why when people are looking at judicial candidates, they kind of think, well, I don't know what difference it makes. I mean, they're not telling me anything. You're not going to sit here and say my policy views are X, Y, and Z because it's not your job. Right. That's what I want to get to. You can't. It's not that you won't. It's that you can't. And why is that?
The rules of judicial conduct prohibit us from making public positions on issues that could come before the court. And since virtually everything that affects a Texan can come through our court, I'm very limited in what I can say on those issues. But I think it's important for people to get to know the candidates on a very personal level. I hope people will visit whitehillforjustice.com and learn a lot about me and my family there. So we're in this period now where people want to send us questionnaires and find out information about us, and happy to fill those out. But they all ask for my campaign Facebook page. I have one. I set one up when I ran the last time, but I don't really, because I don't think of myself as a politician. I don't think of myself as a political candidate. I think of myself as an office holder and a judicial candidate who is sworn and takes seriously the oath to be fair, impartial, unbiased, and what have you. So if people want to know about me, visit the website and visit my personal Facebook page. You'll learn a lot about me there.
It's great, I'll tell you.
Or contact me and do that. I'm happy to speak to neighborhood associations, Rotary Club, whatever, and go out and meet people. And as vitally important as our court is, nobody knows about us. We're the dark matter of the legal universe. We hold everything together, but nobody knows we're there.
It is actually unfortunate, and actually for our Texas voters, it may be true in other states too, but when you go to vote in the fall, many people obviously aware it's a presidential year, you're going to go, and some people might go in and just make their choice for president and maybe not go down the ballot. But these down ballot races, which I don't even like that expression because it makes them sound as though they're less important, the races from the top of the ballot all the way to the bottom, you're choosing people who are going to have a huge impact on your life, including what we're speaking with Justice Whitehill, someone who sits on a court with tremendous consequence to the average citizen, and yet we don't know about them because they don't get out there and make speeches and step and say what they believe in, but they believe in the rule of law, and they believe in the structure of law that says we have 3 branches of government, and your job in the judiciary is to enforce the law. But I want to dive in because we still have like 5 more minutes. I want to dive in, give some people some examples, because I know when I first was more conscious of all this, I was thinking, well, what, in my life, I mean, as you say, everyone hopes they don't end up in court, but what kinds of things, like the will you make, maybe?
Sure.
Okay, what other kinds of instances?
You invest in a business, okay? You're going to talk about contract law. You're going to talk about property law. You're going to talk about securities laws. All those things come into play. Why would I invest One of the great things about America, the great things about our economy is we're the most innovative, creative country in the world.
Yes, sir.
Why is that so? Because we have this we're not a perfect legal system by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not saying we do. But we have, I think, the best legal system. People have confidence that when they enter into this deal today, their property rights, right? You invest in a company, you've got property rights are going to be protected. Banks, our whole financial system depends upon financial intermediation, so that you have these intermediaries like banks that transition money from people who have it that don't need it right now today and get it into the hands of people that need it today so that they can develop a business, grow, making loans or making investment, what have you. Well, why would a bank loan money to somebody if they don't feel certain that the security interest they have is going to be enforced if that person can't pay at the end of the day? Well, if you have courts that aren't going to enforce those agreements, banks will quit lending money.
Yeah, that is a great example. And, it's kind of funny in America, we've had on many aspects of American life, we have become so accustomed to a civil society, to ordered liberty, to reliable, to notion that our contracts are reliable, the court system is going to enforce the contracts. We just assume all of that as a given living in America. But judges at the trial court level, justices at the appellate court level could change everything if they decide that they're going to be interpreters versus followers of the law. It can be so disruptive to the whole society.
Exactly. When financial intermediation doesn't happen, businesses don't grow. People don't. I like to try to break it down as simply as I can. I don't grow my own food. I didn't build my own house. I don't make my own clothes. I depend on other people to do those things for me. Well, why are they willing to do those things for me? Well, we have a voluntary exchange economy that says they can get an advantage out of it, I can get an advantage of it. But for that to work, people have to have confidence that the rule of law is going to be in place, it's going to be enforced, and their reasonable expectations are going to be there. But the law, okay, what is the law? The Bill's definition of the law is simply a system for organizing relationships among people. That's all it is.
I love that. Go ahead.
So what relationships do we want to organize? Well, all of them. We want to organize families. We want to organize businesses. We want to organize. What happens if something bad happens to somebody? Well, the law is about recognizing, allocating, and dealing with risk. What's a fair way to deal with those things?
I think I mentioned this. I may have even been when you were on the show before, I'm not sure, but you talk about an economy and a whole structure of society you can trust because you have law in place. Oddly, for some reason, I remember growing up like in junior high school where there was some communist country in South America that had seized the assets of an oil company. They just
Venezuela.
said, yeah. And so all of a sudden you thought you owned this and you had the oil company and whatever the business they were doing there and you don't own it anymore. And I remember standing with my dad in the kitchen watching this on the kitchen television saying, they can't just do that. He said, yeah, they can. They actually can, because it's not America. They can do that and we can't fight it. So these are a very harsh kind of a juxtaposition of what we expect in America and what can happen when we don't uphold that. We know we're running out of time here, but I want to make sure and tell people. So again, this fall's election on November 3rd in Texas, probably a lot of states, wherever you're listening from, you're electing judges. And the idea of electing judges who will follow the law, or to use a term believes in natural law, not make it up from the bench, which is judicial activism or positivism, it makes all the difference in order in America. So again, if you listen one more time, how they can find you and support you, or at least know about you.
WhitehillForJustice.com. WhitehillForJustice.com. It's the website. I think I've got a lot of great information in there about the court, how it works, and me and my family, what my philosophy is. And I've got a whole section there devoted to my bow ties. So that might be the best part of it.
See, the other thing, your bow ties. That's right. I forgot to mention that about the bow ties. Okay. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.